In a land full of dragons, there was once a discussion of physical features. One of the thorny dragons asked his friend why he had spikes all over his back and why he did not. This led them to think about their genetics and how this could even happen. In all thorny dragons, there is a specific developmental pathway that is followed, which produces skin cells. Now, in some dragons, spikes will grow, but in other dragons, spikes do not grow. How can this be possible if all the dragons have the exact same genome sequences? These dragons wanted to figure it out and needed to test out some hypothetical situations. First, they needed to see if a wild-type version, or a version with no mutations of the pathway, would yield spikes. In the developmental pathway possessed by all thorny dragons, S promotes P, which can then block I. Without any I to block K, K can then promote E, which promotes the formation of spikes in thorny dragons. Next, the dragons wanted to throw in some mutations in the developmental network. They decided to mutate P and see what happens. Without P functioning in the network, there is nothing repressing I, so I will then repress K. If K is repressed, then it is not able to promote E, meaning that spikes will not be formed. The next mutation they wanted to try was with I. The start of the developmental pathway would be the same, where S promotes P and P would block I, but if I is mutated, then P cannot repress it. Without I, there is nothing repressing K, meaning that K can promote E, which then promotes the spike formation. The two dragons also wanted to see what would happen if there was more than one mutation occurring. So first they chose to mutate I and E. This would mean that S promotes P, which then can block I, but if I is mutated, then it cannot be repressed. This would lead to nothing repressing K, so it promotes E. With E being mutated in the pathway, it cannot be promoted by K, nor can it promote the formation of spikes. The last mutation the dragons wanted to test out was an S and K. If S is mutated, then there is nothing promoting P, meaning that I will not be blocked and will actively repress K. Since K also has a mutation, it will not be repressed. But it also cannot promote E, meaning that E can then not promote the formation of spikes. With all this knowledge on the thorny dragon developmental pathway, the two dragons thought more about when a dragon would develop spikes and when they wouldn't. They thought more about the spikes on their skin and decided it wasn't necessary to have spikes growing on their faces and paws. One type of regulation that could inhibit or allow the development of spikes is histone modification. This type of epigenetic change is the tightening and loosening of the histone proteins around DNA. Parts of the sequence that are more tightly wound by the histone proteins would not be expressed, thus resulting in the potential development of or inhibition of spikes. As shown here, the P gene in the developmental pathway is wound tightly by the histone protein, meaning that it will not be expressed, inhibiting the development of spikes. References are as follows.